John Letour is a man in his early 40s, living in bustling and dynamic New York City. He works as a courier for and a woman who deals in illegal substances for very wealthy clients, mostly from the banking and financial sector. Every day, John wheels around the city delivering packages, but along with that comes a deep apathy and insomnia in his life. John often wanders the streets of the city at night with his head buried in his thoughts. He cannot or refuses to sleep, preferring to watch the life around him, how people pass by, how quickly life changes, while he himself remains lost in his inner torments. And his boss, Madam with charisma, which does not leave indifferent to others, thinks about leaving this environment and go into the cosmetics business. She sees this as an opportunity for herself to start a new life, getting out of a dangerous and unstable world. But despite her various plans, John remains under constant stress. Not only does he suffer from insomnia, but he feels that his life has lost all meaning. A conflict rages within him. He realizes that the life he leads is dangerous and unhealthy, but nevertheless he is drawn to this dark world that he would like to escape from. John and Anne have difficult conversations about the future, about what they can do to leave the business, and, in particular, about John's desire to get rid of the habits that are pulling him down so much. Their relationship goes beyond mere business communication. There is a kind of intimacy between them based on the time they have spent together and the difficult situations they have both experienced. John, in particular, often thinks of a plan to change his life, but constant fear and doubt stops him. He tries to find himself, but usually ends up in even more confusing situations. One of the key figures in John's life is his old acquaintance Lucy, with whom he had an affair in the past. She comes back into his life, herself lost and troubled. Lucy is the center of his own demons, further exacerbating his insecurities. She brings back memories of a time when life seemed brighter and fuller. Their interaction is full of memories, regrets, and hopes, but also brimming with the fear they both feel. John tries to help Lucy, but whenever he tries to take a step towards a solution, he is pulled back into the dark waters he seems to want to escape from. These moments between them are full of emotional intensity, where past, present, and future intersect, creating a tension that won't go away. One evening, John, already desperate and tired, meets one of Anne's clients, a businessman with powerful connections. This meeting leads him to realize the danger and unpredictability of his work. The client, confident in his superiority, warns John of the consequences if he tries to leave the business. This moment plunges John into even more stress. He realizes that his desire for change is not only due to his personal anxieties, but also to the threats that come from those who take his work and lifestyle for granted. Agreeing to work with and becomes a kind of trap for John. On the one hand, he wants his life to change for the better. On the other hand, he realizes that he is risking a lot. This eventually leads to a rift starting to appear between John and Anne. He feels that and doesn't understand his struggles, doesn't understand what he is going through. They both find themselves in a cruel world where trust and loyalty are becoming increasingly rare, and they question whether it's time to reevaluate their relationship and for John himself to set boundaries. As John begins to interact with Lucy more actively, he is once again immersed in memories of how happy they were in the first place, confronting the dark realities they both have to face. But nevertheless, Lucy still needs the drugs, and John can't ignore her needs, feeling responsible for her fate. This relationship becomes like a death loop where they both begin to destroy each other. Watching Lucy deal with her own demons, John is unable to stay away. He realizes that it's not just the past that binds them together, but shared fears, and despite his intentions, he finds himself once again in their tight embrace. Their conversations are full of regret, laughter, and pain, while reality mercilessly consumes their vibrant bond. They struggle, and each broken moment as they try to plan for tomorrow becomes more difficult and overwhelming. In his search for clarity and understanding, John is forced to face his inner self. He makes many attempts to make sense of the situation, but each time he finds that the more he tries to understand himself and the world around him, the further he drifts away from simple solutions. He struggles with his attitude towards life, and eventually it takes him to places he never thought possible before. One day, on one of his sleepless evenings, John decides that he needs to take things out of bounds. He tries to limit his interactions with Anne and Lucy, immersing himself in his thoughts that it's time for him to shift his focus and start a new life. He contemplates changing his route and his fulcrum, and this decision becomes a real revelation to him. In this period of his life, there is a hope that, once seemed unattainable to him. But that hope turns out to be short-lived. Here he faces a new impulse, a new threat from his clients who could potentially ruin his plans. Thus begins John's most difficult fight for his survival. He realizes that if he doesn't leave the dangerous business, he will inevitably face consequences that could overshadow all his previous fears. The decision to leave his familiar life turns to real stress and excitement. Wandering the streets at night, he realizes that there is really nowhere to run to. His inner world conflicts with reality and he feels increasingly isolated. John receives one of his most important phone calls. It's a message from Lucy. She is absent and this indifference begins to weigh on his mind. He feels scared and depressed, but eventually decides to meet with her. They discuss their feelings, their pains and fears. This meeting becomes a final attempt to find a path to clarity. But no matter how hard they try, they are already drowned in the noise of the city, and reality melts their hopes. In this moment, John realizes that his life, full of fear, lost opportunities and ambiguities, requires decisive steps. He realizes that love and trust cannot exist in a world dominated by manipulation and destructive habits. As a result, he decides to sever ties with the past and begin to move away from these sinister circles. But this decision is not an easy one. His first attempt to end his relationship with Anne and his subsequent interactions with the salesman take a toll on him. John finally finds the courage. He walks away from the dark alleys, leaving his usual way of living in the past and turning towards the light, towards a new life, new possible love and chances. He leaves at dawn as the city begins to awaken. Everything that was important is now left behind and a new unknown road ahead, full of hope and the possibility of change, stalks ahead. John doesn't know what tomorrow holds, but he doesn't want to wonder anymore. He just needs a fresh start, stability, and a coterie of dear people with whom he's willing to share the journey, as hard as it may be. He is ready for change, ready to face a new reality. And strangely enough, with each step he realizes that life has more to offer than just struggle, and he has a chance to finally heal from his inner horrors and worries.